Well, good evening.
If you're looking for Tim Scott, you can find him at monthly Tea Party meetings.
Obamacare. Get rid of it. Period.
Scott, as he is quick to point out, is a Republican who happens to be black. But more than anything, he's a true blue conservative who loves to talk discipline, fiscal, and otherwise.
My mother was a disciplinarian. She taught me that love comes at the end of a switch. And she was so in love with me, she used it consistently. She was teaching me something that America needs to know today in desperate ways, that discipline is a major key to the breakthrough.
That discipline, according to Scott, starts with reducing the deficit and limiting the role of government.
Should a government bureaucrat make the decisions on health care, or should the health care provider make the decision on health care?
Scott's message is resonating well in this heavily Republican district, which stretches hundreds of miles from Charleston to Myrtle Beach. That also means lots of time in the car.
This is our campaign office, without any question.
But all that driving seems to be paying off. Polls show Scott way ahead of his opponents, even though some think they can still win.
I understand he is the favored candidate, but his hold on the race is getting smaller and smaller.
Tim Scott's life story does not start out very well. He grew up in poverty here in Charleston, South Carolina. He was raised by a single mom who worked 16 hours a day. In 9th grade, he failed 4 subjects and almost flunked out of high school. But then he walked into a Chick-fil-A restaurant and his life changed forever. As a 14-year-old working part-time at the movie theater, Scott would regularly stop in at the Chick-fil-A next door.
I'm always buying French fries over there at Chick-fil-A because I couldn't afford the Chick-fil-A sandwich.
There, he met John Moniz, a born-again Christian who took an interest in young Tim.
John started teaching me the basic principles of conservatism and capitalism, which was amazing because he did it in a spiritual perspective. I mean, he led with love.
Those Chick-fil-A conversations led to better grades and a sense of purpose. The Christian witnessing continued with Tim's friend Roger.
I would always ask Roger, no matter what day it was he was at, I was like, Roger, why are you happy? And Roger's like, Jesus is Lord. And I'm like, well, got it, but what else?
Tim found the answer to that question a few years later at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes meeting where he made the personal decision to give his life to Jesus Christ.
I just dove into the scriptures and started memorizing different scriptures and started becoming, as much as possible, a part of the scripture. I mean, I wanted it to be grafted in my heart.
He not only grafted it into his heart, but into his public policy too.
If you don't work, you don't eat. It doesn't say if you cannot work, that's a different conversation. Ethnic reform, according to the book of James, is at a higher level for leaders. And I think it should be.
15 years ago, as a city councilman, Scott tried to put a 10 Commandments plaque outside the council offices, but a circuit court judge stopped that plan.
It was really giving God an opportunity to be seen and to be heard in the public forum based on the history of our country.
The history of this country also carries the stain of racism. While the media plays up allegations of racism within the Tea Party movement, Tim Scott says he hasn't seen it.
I have not yet to find the first racist comment or the first person who approaches me from a racist perspective.
Tea Party members agree.
Frankly, I don't care if he's black or white. What I care about is how does he vote.
Scott is supported by the newly formed South Carolina Black Conservative Movement. They believe black conservatives need to speak with a loud voice.
There's not going to be any opportunity for anybody in this country, black, white, whatever, if we don't get America moving. And we're not going to get it moving by the government taking more and more control. We need to get out of government's control, out of government's hands and back in God's hands.
I'm not going to be the black Republican. I'm going to be a Republican who happens to be black, who will talk about issues that I'm passionate about.
Scott knows that if he makes it to Washington, his constituents will want him to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk.
And I want you to do what you said you're going to do for us, because we will be watching.
And Scott knows that God is watching too.
There is nothing special about Tim Scott. I'm an ordinary guy serving an extraordinary God, and that makes the difference.
David Brody, CBN News in Charleston, South Carolina.